We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Heisman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talk Stros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. And Brett, where can you find you on Twitter?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
And don't forget, we're going to be talking about what's going on with the qualifying offer for George Springer. We're also going to be talking about Jackie Bradley Jr., who is rumored to be maybe the primary target for the Houston Astros this offseason. And we'll be talking a little bit about Trevor Bauer and a little bit more on this Locked On Astros podcast. You can get Locked On Astros on Podcast app Himalaya, as well as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And when you get in your car, tell your smart device to play the podcast Locked On Astros. Okay, so I know that Tuesday is the day where George Springer has to basically say, okay, I'm gonna accept the qualifying offer. He would come back to play with the Astros for another season for 18.9 million. I'm pretty sure he's not gonna sign that. He's gonna say no. And what's going to happen is because the Astros did go over the luxury tax threshold in 2020, they will get a pick after the fourth round, I believe it is, or in the fourth round or something like that. They're not going to get the competitive balance or whatever it is after a second round because they did go over. And so that's something that we have to consider. But a fourth round pick is still better than losing George Springer for nothing. But at the same time, who knows? But who knows how many rounds this draft is going to be next year? Is if it's 5 rounds again, then that's you're basically getting a second to last round pick. But there's still good quality talent at that point. So, any thoughts on George Springer staying with the Astros and signing a 1 year qualifying offer?
Well, I don't think he'll do that.
No Kool Aid today.
Here, I don't. I mean, of course, I want to say yes because I want to keep him here. But what does a 1 year deal do for George Springer? Now, here are my three things that would keep George Springer in Houston. Number one, he is the perennial leader of the clubhouse, and he's also the leader in the community, and he has embraced that status. Like he loves playing that role. He's a genuinely good guy. He's entrenched in the community. Number two, the Astros would have to be willing, I think, to put all their marbles in this basket. Unfortunately, if they pay him what he wants, they may be able to finagle the contract a little bit, but you're really cutting your nose off to spite your face with that, and you're having to pay him quite a bit. And then number
If they
three,
sign Springer, sorry, but if they sign Springer,
yeah,
that's all they're doing this offseason.
exactly. So that's what I'm saying is basically you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And the third thing that would keep him here is that he wants to stay here because he feels like the Astros have a legitimate shot at returning to the postseason and making a long playoff run. Now, we talk about reality here. The three things that I think are going to send him packing. Number one, he still recalls losing the year of eligibility and knows how he would have benefited if he was a free agent last year. I think that sets in the back of his mind. His agent has got to be talking to him about that. Number two, his desire to be close to home. As he and his wife look at growing their family, expanding their family, having kids, they want to be close to his parents. And that's, you can't fault a guy for that. And number three, I think the three clubs that are most likely to sign him, the Red Sox, the Mets, and the Blue Jays, are all very close proximity to where his parents live. The only question mark I have with the Blue Jays are all the taxes and different things that go along with living in Canada. They have quite a few high taxes up there in Canada, and they've got all kinds of different things that we don't have here in the states. So, Eric, realistically, I think Springer's gone. Um, I think if Springer wanted to stay, he would take the qualifying offer and then wait till next year. Hopefully, the budget's increased. No, I'm just saying, if he wanted to stay, he would take the qualifying offer with the promise that the Astros would maybe offer him something the next year. But the other obstacle to that is Carlos Correa and everything else going on. So, I was a 70-30 guy, then I was a 50-50 guy. I think I'm a 30-70. I think I'm a 20-80 guy right now. I just don't think there's much of a chance of him staying in Houston.
Yeah, I think that if he signs a qualifying offer, it's because he's been told that just give the Astros a few months and they can give him a long term deal he wants. And that's the only way he accepts the qualifying offer. He will not play the 2021 season for 18.9 million. I do not think that he would. So if he did accept it, it's only because Jim Crane and James Click go ahead and offer him a extension, but they said, "Hey, you got to be patient with us. We got to figure out some things first, and then but they'll have to have some basic agreement." But I just don't see that happening. I just,
Mhm.
especially James Click being a new GM, and there's so much debt in baseball right now because of the whole 2020 season playing without fans. So that's something that the Astros are going to have to deal with among other teams. So one of the replacement options out there is Jackie Bradley Jr. I know that he's more of a defensive specialist in center field. He did have a great season offensively this past year. Granted, it was only 55 games, but he batted 383 and with a on base percentage of 364 and a slugging percentage of 450. So that's above what he typically does. So that's something that you can say, oh, well, maybe he can improve offensively. He did have 7 homers, but if you do remember, he did have some big homers and some big games. So that is a guy who can hit some big homers, but he's kind of going to be mostly a defensive guy, especially with. I mean, I know Kyle Tucker was the finalist for the Gold Glove, but we don't know who's going to be in left field. So let's say that you have Tucker in right field, then you have Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field, and then you have somebody like Ledmus Diaz or maybe even Jordan Alvarez or Pedro Leon at some point next year. But you need somebody who can cover the and like make up for Ledmus Diaz's maybe inexperience in outfield, and that's somebody that Jackie Bradley Jr. And so it's kind of it's like a match made in heaven, so to speak. I think that the two sides will probably work on it, and he is 31 years old, and he said that. I mean, I saw some rumors according to Rob Bradford of the We is that the 30-year-old has also drawn interest from the Astros and unidentified team in the AL Central. Bradford adds, speculatively speaking, the Royals and Indians seem to be most likely teams in that division to pursue center fielder help this season. So that means the Royals, the Indians, the Red Sox, and the Astros are the teams that are kind of out there looking at Jackie Bradley Jr. Which one of those teams is more likely to win in 2021? That would probably be the Houston Astros. So that's something that the Astros have in their favor. A lot of people said that it's probably going to take a 2-year, $16 million offer to get him. That's something similar to what they did with Michael Brantley. I think the Astros could do that, and we could see them do that. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Jackie Bradley Jr.'s most likely place to land is in Houston. It just makes sense. I think, I mean, if we recall, we hate to recall when the Astros lose in the playoffs, but when he was with the Red Sox, and remember he hit that grand slam in the ALCS, I believe it was in 2018. He had a couple other big home runs in that series, and I mean, he's got that power. He's got that short porch power to I mean, he can hit that ball to right field. I mean, he can hit it to the Crawford boxes. He can go opposite field. I mean, the guy, the guy can hit the ball. He's not a great hitter, but I think Minute Maid Park is perfect for his type of bat because he's got that sneaky power that when he does crush it, he absolutely obliterates it. The outfield, I think, is perfect for him. There's not too much space. I think the walls, everything around him, play perfectly to his glove and his style of play. Now, I did a little poll online, and 60% of our fans said that they want to see a Brantley, Jackie Bradley Jr., and Kyle Tucker outfield. Now, Brantley is not in the realm of impossibilities to get signed here. It's maybe not likely, but if Brantley can't find any decent offers on a contending team, he may come back. Um, I
He
think
wants to
he
win a
would
World
platoon.
Series. Yeah.
He does want to win a World Series. But I mean, I think that would be an excellent outfield. Yordan Alvarez, every once in a while, once they felt comfortable with him playing in the field, they could let Brantley DH. They could have maybe one game maybe once every 4 game series, you put Alvarez in left field. You let him get some fielding. You let Brantley get off his legs a little bit, or you even, I mean, you could do a myriad of things. You could put him in right field, let Kyle Tucker DH. I don't know, but the second place winner, or with like 22% of the votes, they said they wouldn't mind seeing a Tucker, Jackie Bradley Jr., and Aledmys Diaz. Now, that's basically Aledmys Diaz is a placeholder, I think, until Pedro Leon gets up. Someone asked about Leon. They were like, well, why aren't you figuring him into the mix? And I'm like, well, he won't be up till June or July. And so the Astros have some interesting offseason moves to make. Is Brantley enticed enough by what the Astros have going into next year? And can the Astros offer him enough? Because he's coming off 2 very solid offensive years. There's no reason to think that he should feel like he should have to take a pay cut because of his age. Because he's kind of like fine wine. He just gets sweeter with time, And he's your constant, level-headed, true professional. So I like Jackie Bradley Jr. in Houston. I think it's going to happen. But stranger things have prevailed, and I think Click can maneuver things with Brantley to give you a Brantley Bradley Tucker outfield, which I think would be an amazingly strong outfield. And who would have thought that we could have a strong outfield minus George Springer?
I still think that it's a big question mark without George Springer. I think he is the heart and soul of this team. And you know what should be the heart and soul of basically your snack, or if you're at the gym, or if you just want to just have something that just makes you feel good, like watching George Springer lead off with a homer. I think that would be a Built Bar.
That's right. Built Bar is not just a protein bar, but it's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Also, it is high in protein, low in sugar count, low in carbs, minimal calories for what you get. And it is perfect for the guy or girl that's healthy on the keto diet. If you're on the run working out, you're at work, you got to have a snack, grab a Built Bar. Built Bar right now has an amazing offer. If you type in Locked On the builtbar.com website, you will get 20% off your first order. And while supplies last, they'll even mail you a little cooler pouch to put your Built Bar in. We personally chill our Built Bars, and right now, my favorite flavor is still the strawberry. It is unbelievable. It has 17 grams of protein and just packed with chocolatey goodness. Go to builtbar.com and get 20% off using the Locked On code. That's builtbar.com.
So I know that Jackie Bradley Jr. has some interest in returning back to Boston, and I know Alex Core is back being a manager. I think we talked about it on the last podcast, or we said it could happen, and it actually did happen. And I know a lot of people across baseball are like, "Oh, okay, well, you basically let him go, and then he serves his suspension. Now you bring him back." But the Red Sox are a much different team than when Alex Cora left. They're a team that's probably not going to win a lot of ball games in 2021. They do have a good young nucleus, but at the same time, they need some pitching. And their pitching, just without Chris Sale, it's not as dominant. And so it just, I don't know. I don't think he's going to go back to the Red Sox, and I think he's going to look to. He is 30. We see how people like Josh Reddick at a certain point in their career, they're going to have to start accepting 1 and 2 year deals, and I think Jackie Bradley Jr. wants to go and win another World Series, and that way he can do that in Houston. And looking at all the other teams, they're just not that likely to do that. But something I saw on our notes today was the name Trevor Bauer came up again. And I know some Astros fans are like, oh, yeah, we'll take him. Some people are like, nope, don't even want him on the team. So what's going on
Like
with
me.
Trevor Bauer?
Yeah, like me. I want him to come on the show. I just don't want him to be a Houston Astro. So Bauer, if you hear that and you want to kind of go back and forth with me, let's do it. Basically, with rejecting the qualifying offer already because the deadline's Tuesday, what happens is if a team takes him on and they have gone over the luxury tax, then they would have to surrender its second or fifth highest picks or highest selection. So their highest selection was a third round pick and a sixth round pick. They would have to surrender those. Plus, they would also see their league allotted international bonus pool reduced to $1 million. And so it says clubs that receive revenue sharing in a typical season and do not exceed the tax threshold are only required to sign their third highest selection to a signed qualified free agent. This is via MLBTradeRumors.com. And so Trevor Bauer, it becomes tricky now because you don't just get to sign this guy that's very talented, but you have to take a hit. You know, the Astros have already taken a hit in these next couple of years in the first and second round picks, not having those. So why take Bauer on? He's going to want a lot of money, even for a single year. I don't think it makes sense for him to sign with the Astros. I know why a lot of people want him, and it makes sense baseball wise, but financially, chemistry wise in the clubhouse, and how it's going to affect your club in the long run. It would be like if we were the Houston Texans, and we're not. We're the Houston Astros. We don't trade away, superstars.
All your first
Yeah,
round picks and
all your first round picks for guys that rush 3.8 yards a carry like David Johnson.
yeah, and I know that it's probably not going to affect Pedro Leon, but if you take away from the Astros international money pool, that's going to hurt them more than losing the draft pick, and that's something that I think the commissioner's office realized when they did the punishment for the Astros, and so but we'll have to see what happens. But I don't think I don't think the Astros really have the money. You don't need a starter, you need an outfielder, you need a reliever and maybe another outfielder, backup, Jake Marisnick type player or somebody like that. But the Astros have cheaper options, so we'll have to see what they feel comfortable with, and we're going to see what James Click can do because this is his first time as really the manager. The GM. So I know that he did pass at making any trades at the trade deadline, but I think that was on purpose. I think that they didn't want to really trade anybody, and they didn't have like a big lead in the division, or I think they're trailing at the time of the trade deadline, and they're like, if we make the playoffs, we're comfortable with the team we have. If we don't make the playoffs, then oh well, we didn't waste any more prospects, because the Astros have traded away a lot of talent over the years. They've lost a lot of talent through free agency this year. Nick Tanalou, just to name one person. So the Astros have lost a lot of talent. They're probably down towards the bottom of the farm system report, but there are still players there, just not the big names like we're used to in the early process days. But I think that the Astros don't need Trevor Bauer. I would honestly love it on this team, but I just don't think he's worth the hassle. Losing
Yeah.
the two draft picks, it's just not worth it.
Well, I just there's too many negatives. We maybe I shouldn't even compare it to this, but we know what it's like picking up a player and putting him on the team that quote unquote has baggage. And I mean, this team needs positive publicity. They don't need,
Carlos Gomez or Osuna. Okay.
I'm talking about Osuna. Well, Gomez is his own worst enemy. I mean, Gomez was just like a ticking time bomb. But I just think it's interesting what's going on in the league. And I know it's going to be a slow postseason, but I mean, you have guys like Brad Hand that aren't getting anything. Then you've got Robbie Ray got re-signed. You got Gossman got a qualifying offer. You've got Justin Turner not being punished or disciplined for basically exposing his entire team and all that stuff, and people freaking out about that.
They won. Come on, they won.
I know. Well, but can you imagine if the Astros had a player that had? Can you imagine if Alex Bregman had COVID and he went out on the field? Do you realize the crucifying and the absolute? I mean, there would be riots in the streets. I mean, they would. You know what I'm saying? They would be protesting at Minute Maid Park. It would just be, all hell's broken loose. But what's crazy is like, what is going to happen to Francisco Lindor? Where is he going to end up? Cora being with the Red Sox. Imagine when the Red Sox play the Tigers and you've got Cora versus Hinch. What a storyline. And a lot of the players are like, hey, they served their suspension, but the players on the Astros team, they haven't served anything, and so they're still holding on to that. 2021, I think, is going to be an exciting year. Eric, some other guys that we, and I don't even know if they would come into the mix with us, but Chris Archer wasn't offered a qualifying offer. Some of these guys out there may be offered or may come in at a very discounted rate, even if it's for 1 year. So we really don't know. Right now, we're shooting in the dark, and if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. I hope things speed up a little bit in the news cycle so that we can start making more realistic scenarios of who's going to be on this team in 2021.
Yeah, so to kind of close out the show, this is what Click had to say on how much he can spend this offseason. What we think 2021 is going to look like operationally and what the market bears out as a result of that. As of now, nobody can truly know what the 2021 season will look like. So basically, they're going to kind of wait it out. They're going to be patient, just like Jeff Luno was. They're going to be
Is that
patient.
what we call? Is that what we call a non-answer?
Yes. So I
Okay.
think the last part was actually not him. That was from the article, but the first part was what he had to say. And I think that we're going to see somebody like a patient Jeff Luno, just kind of waiting for the right deals. When he got Michael Brantley, that was a pretty good deal. When he waited for Charlie Morton, that was a pretty good deal. So I think you're going to see that. But I think if the Astros know they can't bring back Springer, if they're pretty sure they can't bring back Michael Brantley, you need to go out and go all in on Jackie Bradley Jr. I mean, don't overpay him, but do what it takes to get him here because the Astros do have a chance to win again in 2021. And go listen to my friend Soli over at the Locked On MLB podcast. I'm sure he's talking about all the different rumors out there, and that's a good thing. He gets to cover all the teams, not just the Houston Astros. And we'll be back tomorrow for another Locked On Astros podcast, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.